Books burn at 451 degrees. But François Truffaut's adaptation of Ray Bradbury's dystopian nightmare didn't just ignite pages, it set fire to everything. The crew nearly froze to death. The director couldn't speak English. And one actress, she played two roles because the star walked out days before cameras rolled. These are 20 weird facts about Fahrenheit 451. And the bonus? There's a hidden message in the opening credits that nobody noticed for years. Light the match. This one burns slow. François Truffaut didn't speak English, not a word. When he signed on to direct Fahrenheit 451, his first English-language film, he thought he could learn fast enough. He bought language tapes, hired tutors, practiced dialogue phonetically. But when production started, he was still lost. On set, he couldn't communicate directly with his actors. He couldn't explain a scene, couldn't give notes, couldn't even call cut without an interpreter standing next to him. Oscar Werner, the lead actor, would ask a question about motivation. Truffaut would stare back, confused, waiting for translation. Julie Christie wanted clarity on a moment. The interpreter had to relay it twice. Every direction became a game of telephone. Every creative choice filtered through someone else's words. The crew watched in disbelief as one of France's greatest directors struggled to guide a film he couldn't verbally command. But Truffaut never panicked. He communicated through gesture, through demonstration, through sheer cinematic instinct. He'd act out a scene himself, showing exactly what he wanted, and somehow, impossibly, it worked. The language barrier didn't kill the film. It made him direct visually, with movement and framing instead of dialogue. Fahrenheit 451 became a masterclass in silent direction, because sometimes the best way to tell a story about the death of words is to lose your own. Julie Christie wasn't supposed to play two roles. She was cast as Clarice, the free-spirited teacher who plants doubt in Montag's mind. One character, one performance, clean and simple. But then, just days before filming began, the actress playing Linda, Montag's wife, dropped out. No explanation, no warning, just gone. Panic set in. The production was already behind schedule, the budget was tight, and now they had a massive hole in the cast. Truffaut considered shutting down. He talked about recasting, about delaying, about starting over. Then someone suggested the impossible. What if Julie Christie played both? It sounded insane. Two opposite characters filmed simultaneously, requiring completely different energy, appearance, and emotional depth. But Christie said yes. She didn't hesitate. She spent mornings as Linda, cold and disconnected, glued to the parlor walls. Then she'd change wigs, shift her posture, soften her voice, and become Clarice, warm and curious and alive. She moved between roles sometimes within the same day, creating two entirely separate human beings. The crew watched her transform in real time, shedding one character like skin and inhabiting another. It wasn't just acting, it was possession. And the result became one of the film's most haunting elements. Two women, same face, opposite souls. Because in a world where everyone is the same, even individuality becomes a performance. The firemen's uniforms weren't costumes. They were actual firefighting gear, pulled from French fire departments and modified for the cameras. Truffaut wanted them to look real, functional, not like Hollywood props. So the crew sourced genuine jackets, helmets, boots, everything a real fireman would wear into a blaze. But there was a problem. The gear was heavy, stifling, designed to protect against extreme heat, and the actors had to wear it under studio lights for hours. Oscar Werner complained constantly. He'd sweat through shirts between takes, struggle to move naturally, stumble over his own boots. The helmet kept slipping, blocking his vision mid-scene. The jacket restricted his shoulders so much he couldn't lift his arms properly. At one point, he nearly collapsed from heat exhaustion and had to be pulled off set, stripped down, and cooled with fans. The medics stood by on high alert, but Truffaut refused to swap the gear for lighter replicas. He insisted the weight, the discomfort, the physical burden, it all fed the performance. Because firemen in this world weren't heroes, they were oppressors. And oppression, it should feel heavy. Every stiff movement, every labored breath, every bead of sweat, it all stayed on screen. The uniforms weren't just authentic, they were an endurance test. And Werner, miserable as he was, wore that suffering into the role.
Philosophy. Let's get rid of it.
There are no opening credits, no title cards, no names, no text at all. Instead, a voice reads them aloud over shots of television antennas. It's disorienting, strange, completely unconventional, and it was Truffaut's middle finger to the written word. In a film about a society that burns books, he refused to put words on screen at the start. He wanted the audience to feel the absence immediately, to understand that in this world, reading is dead. but the studio hated it. They thought it was pretentious, confusing, too artsy for mainstream audiences. They pushed Truffaut to add traditional credits, just names and titles, simple and clean. He said no. They offered to compromise, suggesting text at the end instead. He refused again. They threatened to delay the release, to pull funding, to override him entirely. Truffaut didn't blink. He told them if they added written credits, they could find another director. It was a gamble, a massive, career-risking gamble, but he knew what the film needed. And eventually they caved. The spoken credits stayed. When the film premiered, critics were divided. Some called it brilliant, a perfect thematic choice. Others said it was gimmicky, distracting, unnecessary. But Truffaut didn't care, because Fahrenheit 451 wasn't about pleasing everyone. It was about making a statement. And sometimes, the loudest statement is the one you refuse to write down. The book-burning scenes almost killed the production. Not metaphorically, literally. Truffaut wanted real books burning on camera, hundreds of them, engulfed in flames for maximum impact. So the crew gathered old paperbacks, unsold stock, damaged volumes, anything they could burn legally. They built contained fire pits, set up safety protocols, positioned extinguishers everywhere. Then they lit the match. The flames roared higher than expected. The heat became unbearable within seconds. Smoke filled the soundstage so thick the crew couldn't see the actors. The sprinkler system, installed as a failsafe, malfunctioned. Water didn't come. The fire spread faster than planned, crawling toward set pieces, toward equipment, toward anything flammable. Actors stumbled backward, coughing, eyes streaming. The crew shouted, grabbing extinguishers, fighting to contain the blaze before it consumed the entire stage. For a terrifying moment, it felt like the set itself would burn, like the film would become its own metaphor. Finally, they got it under control, doused the flames, cleared the smoke, but the damage was done. Several crew members needed medical attention for smoke inhalation. Equipment was scorched. The set had to be rebuilt. And Truffaut, standing in the wreckage, made a decision. They'd do it again. Safer this time. More controlled. But they'd do it. Because the scene demanded real fire. Real danger. Real destruction. And when you see those books burning on screen, that terror, that chaos, that barely controlled inferno, it's not special effects. It's survival. Oscar Werner hated François Truffaut. Not at first, but by the end of filming, the hatred was mutual and absolute. It started with creative differences. Werner thought Montag should be played with more internal conflict, more visible anguish. Truffaut wanted him colder, more robotic, slowly awakening. They clashed constantly. Werner would change line readings without permission. Truffaut would make him redo takes until he broke. The tension escalated. Werner started showing up late, missing rehearsals, openly criticizing the director to other cast members. He'd mock Truffaut's English, imitate his broken attempts at direction, laugh at his instructions. On set, he'd refuse to follow blocking, forcing Truffaut to reframe shots on the fly. Once, during a particularly brutal argument, Werner walked off entirely, leaving the crew standing around for hours. Truffaut, furious but professional, waited him out. When Werner finally returned, they finished the scene in icy silence. The crew could feel it, the anger radiating between them, poisoning every take. Julie Christie tried to mediate, to smooth things over, but it was too late. The damage was permanent. After filming wrapped, they never spoke again. Werner gave interviews calling the experience a nightmare. Truffaut, when asked, simply said Werner was difficult. Years later, people wondered how such animosity produced such a powerful film. But maybe that was the point. Fahrenheit 451 is a story about conflict, about control, about breaking free from oppression. And on set, that war was real. The monorail was fake. Every shot of Montag riding the sleek, futuristic transport system, completely fabricated. Truffaut wanted to create a world that felt advanced, sterile, disconnected. But the budget couldn't afford to build actual trains or rent real transit systems. So the crew improvised. They constructed a single monorail car, just the interior, mounted on a static platform inside a soundstage. No tracks, no movement, no mechanism at all. Then they filmed Oscar Werner sitting inside while crew members rocked the car. Manually, simulating motion, they'd push it gently, tilt it side to side, creating the illusion of travel. Meanwhile, projected footage of scenery played on screens outside the windows, scrolling past like a moving landscape. It was old-school movie magic, the kind of trick used in films from decades earlier. But Truffaut sold it. Through careful framing, controlled lighting, and precise editing, he made that static box feel like a functioning vehicle. Audiences never questioned it. They saw a man commuting through a dystopian future, never knowing he was sitting in a motionless prop being jostled by grips. The monorail became one of the film's most memorable visual elements, a symbol of the cold, efficient world Montag inhabited. And it was all smoke and mirrors, because sometimes the most futuristic vision is built from the oldest tricks. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to stand still and shake the camera. There's no musical score in the traditional sense. Bernard Herrmann, the legendary composer behind Psycho and Vertigo, created something different for Fahrenheit 451. He didn't write sweeping orchestral pieces or memorable themes. He built tension through absence, through minimalism, through sound that felt more like breathing than music. Long stretches of the film play in near silence, punctuated only by sparse, unsettling notes. It's uncomfortable, deliberate, designed to make you feel the emptiness. Herrmann understood what Truffaut wanted. This wasn't a world of passion or emotion. It was a world of numbness, of people disconnected from feeling. So the music had to reflect that void. He used electronic tones, unusual instruments, dissonant harmonies that never quite resolved. The result feels less like a score and more like atmospheric dread. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it. Some called it genius, others called it incomplete. But Herrmann knew exactly what he was doing. He'd worked with Hitchcock, understood how sound shapes fear, how silence can be louder than noise. For Fahrenheit 451, he created a sonic landscape that mirrors the story. Empty spaces where music should live, moments of quiet that scream louder than any orchestra. And when the music does swell, rare and brief, it hits like a revelation. Because in a world without books, without words, without thought, even music becomes a radical act. Herrmann didn't just score the film, he scored the silence. The production nearly shut down because of the weather. Truffaut chose to film in England during winter, hoping for a cold, bleak atmosphere. He got it, but he also got rain, snow, freezing temperatures, and conditions so brutal the crew could barely function. Outdoor scenes became ordeals. Actors stood in below-freezing wind, trying to deliver lines while their breath fogged the camera lens. Equipment froze. Cameras jammed. Film stock became brittle in the cold and snapped during takes. The crew wore layers upon layers, but it wasn't enough. Several people developed hypothermia-like symptoms and had to be pulled from set. One cameraman's hands went numb, and he couldn't operate his gear. They wrapped him in blankets, gave him hot tea, sent him to the medic tent. But Truffaut kept pushing. He believed the harshness, the discomfort, the physical suffering, it all served the story. Fahrenheit 451 is about a society frozen in conformity, emotionally cold, spiritually dead. So he wanted the environment to match. He wanted the actors to feel that chill in their bones, to let it seep into their performances. And it worked. When you watch the film, there's a palpable coldness, not just in the visuals, but in the atmosphere, in the way people move and speak. That's not acting technique, that's genuine human response to freezing conditions. The production insurance company nearly pulled the plug, citing unsafe working conditions. But Truffaut negotiated, promised better precautions, and kept filming. Because some visions require suffering, and Fahrenheit 451 was built on ice. The book people weren't actors. At the end of the film, when Montag discovers the community of exiles who've memorized books to preserve them, Truffaut cast real people, not professionals. He wanted authenticity, individuals who felt lived in, weathered, real. So he pulled from the local community, found elderly men and women, people with interesting faces and genuine presence. He gave them minimal direction. Just walk, recite, exist. And they did. Each person was assigned a book to memorize, or at least sections of it. They'd pace through the snow, speaking the words aloud, performing the ultimate act of preservation. The scene is haunting because it feels true. These aren't polished performances, they're ordinary people doing something extraordinary, becoming living libraries. Truffaut didn't want Hollywood glamour, he wanted humanity, and by casting non-actors, he found it. The book people became the heart of the film, the answer to all the destruction, the hope buried in despair, and they weren't pretending, they were just people in the snow, remembering, because in the end, that's all we are, stories trying not to be forgotten. Ray Bradbury hated it. The author of the original novel watched Truffaut's adaptation and walked out feeling betrayed. It wasn't the visuals or the performances, it was the soul. Bradbury believed his book was about the death of literature, the danger of censorship, the power of reading. Truffaut saw something else. He made it about television, about mass media, about conformity through entertainment. The shift was subtle but fundamental. In Bradbury's world, books were banned by an oppressive government. In Truffaut's film, people chose to stop reading, seduced by screens and empty content. The blame shifted from authority to apathy. Bradbury felt that missed the point entirely. He gave interviews criticizing the adaptation, saying Truffaut didn't understand American culture, didn't grasp the urgency of the warning. He pointed to scenes that felt cold and European, lacking the emotional fire he'd written. Truffaut, when confronted, shrugged. He respected Bradbury but believed film required interpretation, transformation. The two never reconciled their visions. For years, Bradbury would cite Fahrenheit 451 as proof that authors should never trust filmmakers. Yet ironically, the film gained cult status, beloved by audiences who'd never read the book. Two visions, same title, completely different fires. The parlor walls were revolutionary. In Bradbury's novel, Montag's wife Linda obsesses over interactive television screens that dominate entire walls. Truffaut had to bring that to life in 1966, decades before flat screens existed. The technology didn't exist, so he invented it. The crew built massive projection systems, rear-projecting filmed content onto wall-sized screens. They created fake interactive shows, filming actors addressing the camera directly, speaking to imaginary viewers at home. Linda sits mesmerized, responding to prompts, playing along with scripted drama. It looks primitive now, but in 1966, it was prophetic. Truffaut essentially predicted reality television, interactive media, the way screens would dominate domestic life. He showed people glued to walls, ignoring their spouses, living through manufactured emotions. Test audiences found it strange and unsettling. They didn't understand why anyone would watch television that way. But Truffaut saw the future. He understood that media wasn't just entertainment, it was replacement, substitution for real human connection. The parlor wall scenes take up significant runtime, far more than the book devoted to them. Critics called it excessive, but Truffaut insisted. He wanted viewers to feel the hypnotic pull, the emptiness, the addiction. And watching those scenes now, knowing what came after, it's chilling how accurate he was. The film's color palette wasn't accidental. Truffaut and cinematographer Nicolas Roeg created a specific visual language, cold blues and sterile whites for the conformist world, warm oranges and reds for moments of awakening. Every scene was precisely color-graded before that was standard practice. They controlled lighting, wardrobe, set design, even makeup to maintain the dichotomy. Montag's fireman uniform, black and red, symbolized destruction. Clarisse wore earth tones, greens and browns, connecting her to nature, to life outside the system. Linda existed in pale blues and whites, blending into the walls she worshipped. The color coding was subtle enough that audiences didn't consciously notice, but visceral enough to affect their emotions. Roeg, who'd later direct Don't Look Now and The Man Who Fell to Earth, brought artistic vision that elevated Truffaut's concepts. Together they created a world that felt simultaneously futuristic and timeless. The cinematography won praise, though Roeg and Truffaut clashed over control. Roeg wanted more experimental shots, more visual risks. Truffaut, already battling language barriers and a hostile lead actor, needed reliability. They compromised, finding balance between innovation and function. The result is a film that looks unlike anything from its era, bridging European art cinema and science fiction in ways that influenced decades of filmmakers. There's a deleted scene that changes everything. In Truffaut's original cut, there was an extended sequence showing Montag's gradual awakening, a slower transformation with more internal struggle. Test audiences found it too slow, too cerebral. The studio demanded cuts. Truffaut fought but eventually surrendered 15 minutes, including a crucial scene where Montag tries teaching Linda to read. He sits with her, patient and hopeful, showing her letters, sounding out words. She stares blankly, then starts crying. Not from emotion, but from confusion, from the effort of thinking. She begs him to stop, to turn on the walls, to let her retreat into comfortable numbness. It's devastating, showing the true horror of their world. not government oppression but voluntary ignorance. Without this scene, Linda seems simply shallow. With it, she's tragic, a victim who's chosen her own prison. The footage still exists in archives, occasionally screened at retrospectives. Those who've seen it argue the film loses essential depth without it. Truffaut agreed but had no power to restore it. For decades, Fahrenheit 451 existed incomplete, missing the bridge between Montag's world and his transformation. Only in recent years have restoration efforts considered reinstating lost footage, though debates continue about artistic intent versus commercial reality. The mechanical hound terrified everyone. Bradbury's novel features a robotic creature that hunts readers, a nightmarish fusion of animal and machine. Truffaut knew he couldn't build it practically, not with 1960s effects, so he went abstract, creating something worse than any physical prop could be. The hound exists mostly through sound design, through shadows, through implication. When it appears, it's brief, angular, suggesting menace without full revelation. The effects team built a partial model, just enough to photograph, mostly metallic legs and sensors. They moved it jerkily, unnaturally, making it feel wrong, alien. Then they added sound layers, mechanical clicks mixed with organic breathing, creating audio that made audiences deeply uncomfortable. During test screenings, people reported feeling genuine fear during hound scenes despite barely seeing the creature. That was Truffaut's genius. He understood that imagination creates better monsters than budgets ever could. By showing less, suggesting more, he made the hound unforgettable. Crew members admitted the thing gave them nightmares, even knowing it was fake, even having built it themselves. Because sometimes the scariest monster is the one you can't quite see, the threat that exists in peripheral vision, in sound, in the space between frames. Julie Christie nearly quit. Playing two demanding roles simultaneously pushed her to breaking points multiple times. She'd finish an emotional scene as Clarice, barely have time to change, then immediately film Linda's cold detachment. The whiplash was psychological torture. She couldn't maintain boundaries between characters, started losing herself in the transitions. One day she walked off set, locked herself in her trailer, and refused to come out. The crew waited. Truffaut paced. Finally, he went to her alone, without interpreters, without cameras. What they discussed remained private, but Christie emerged different, settled, ready. She later said Truffaut helped her understand something crucial about the dual performance. Linda and Clarice weren't separate people. They were two possibilities of the same soul, one surrendered to the system, one resisting. Playing them wasn't schizophrenic, it was showing human potential's full range. That realization changed everything. Christie stopped fighting the overlap and leaned into it, letting echoes of Clarice haunt Linda's scenes, letting Linda's emptiness inform Clarice's urgency. The performance became unified, despite its duality. Critics praised her work and she received awards attention, though the film's mixed reception prevented major recognition. Still, Christie considered Fahrenheit 451 among her most challenging, most meaningful work, a role that demanded everything and gave back understanding. The book-burning permits were nearly impossible to obtain. British authorities were understandably hesitant about letting a film crew set massive fires indoors. Truffaut needed legal clearance, fire marshal supervision, insurance coverage, and safety protocols that barely existed. The bureaucracy was overwhelming. Applications were denied repeatedly. Officials cited fire codes, safety regulations, liability concerns. They suggested using fake flames, practical effects, anything but actual burning. Truffaut refused to compromise. He hired lawyers, safety experts, fire professionals. He presented detailed plans showing containment strategies, evacuation routes, emergency procedures. He demonstrated the political importance of the film, arguing that showing book burning served educational purposes. After months of negotiation, permits were grudgingly granted with strict conditions. Fire marshals had to be present during every burn scene. Sprinkler systems had to be tested hourly. Only specific materials could be burned, nothing toxic or dangerous. The crew could only film for limited hours before mandatory cool-down periods. These restrictions made shooting incredibly difficult, forcing Truffaut to maximize every permitted minute. Camera crews worked in shifts, capturing multiple angles simultaneously so they wouldn't have to relight fires. The pressure was immense, the margin for error non-existent, but those restrictions created urgency that translated to screen. Every flame feels precious, dangerous, real, because it was. Anton Diffring's character wasn't in the novel. Fabian the fire captain was Truffaut's invention, a personification of the system's seductive logic. Diffring played him with quiet menace, never shouting, never overtly villainous, just calmly explaining why burning books protects happiness. He's more frightening than any screaming dictator because he believes absolutely in his mission. Diffring brought theatrical gravitas from years on British stages, creating a character who could have been cartoonish but instead feels real, relatable, dangerous. His scenes with Montag crackle with tension, not from conflict but from twisted paternal concern. Fabian genuinely likes Montag, wants to save him from dangerous thinking. That relationship, absent from Bradbury's book, became the film's emotional core. Truffaut used it to explore complicity, the ways good people serve evil systems while believing they're helping. Diffring understood the assignment perfectly. He never played Fabian as evil, just convinced, dedicated, tragically certain. That nuance made him unforgettable. The character influenced later dystopian films. The calm authoritarian became an archetype. You see echoes in everything from Brazil to The Matrix. Villains who smile while crushing freedom, who sincerely believe oppression equals safety.
The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal.
The ending changed everything. In Bradbury's novel, Montag escapes and joins the book people, but the city is destroyed by war, reduced to nuclear ash. Truffaut filmed it differently. He kept the destruction ambiguous, focusing instead on the community's quiet persistence. The book people recite their memorized texts in falling snow, walking through winter forests, becoming living vessels of human knowledge. It's hopeful where Bradbury was apocalyptic, gentle where the novel was violent. Truffaut later explained he wanted European sensibility, emphasizing cultural preservation over American action. Bradbury hated this change most of all, feeling it neutered his warning about nuclear annihilation. But Truffaut believed hope served the message better than destruction. Showing survivors quietly preserving humanity felt more powerful than mushroom clouds. The final image, people walking through snow reciting literature, became iconic. It suggested that no matter what happens, human culture survives through memory, through dedication, through individuals who refuse to forget. Film schools studied this ending for decades, debating whether it betrayed or elevated the source material. Both sides had merit. Bradbury's apocalypse warned of specific dangers. Truffaut's quiet resistance offered timeless resilience. Neither was wrong. They were simply different fires, burning with different purposes. The film bombed initially. Despite critical interest and Truffaut's reputation, Fahrenheit 451 failed commercially in most markets. American audiences found it too slow, too European, too cold. British audiences thought it too American in its paranoia. French audiences felt betrayed that Truffaut made an English film at all. The studio lost money, cut promotion, dumped it from theaters quickly. Truffaut was devastated. He'd fought so hard, survived the language barrier, the feuding actors, the technical challenges, only to watch audiences reject the finished work. Critics were mixed, some praising its vision, others calling it lifeless and dull. The failure stung deeply, making Truffaut question whether he could work in English-language cinema. He returned to French films, never attempting another English production. But something strange happened over decades. Fahrenheit 451 found its audience slowly, through repertory screenings, through home video, through film students discovering it. The themes Truffaut emphasized, media saturation, voluntary ignorance, technology replacing human connection, became increasingly relevant. By the 1980s, it was considered prophetic. By the 2000s, essential. The film that nobody wanted became the film everybody needed, its warning growing louder as reality caught up to fiction. Hidden in the opening credits, spoken not written, there's a joke nobody caught for years. The voice reading the credits deliberately mispronounces several names, subtly, barely noticeable. It wasn't an accident. Truffaut, frustrated by English pronunciation, included intentional errors as commentary on language barriers, on the difficulty of translation, on the ways meaning gets lost between tongues. The sound mixer tried correcting them, but Truffaut refused. He wanted those small imperfections. those moments where communication almost works but doesn't quite, because that tension defined his entire experience, making the film. Scholars only discovered this intentional choice decades later, when restoration work revealed production notes explaining the decision. It's the perfect hidden detail for a movie about communication, about the fragility of preserved knowledge, about how easily truth becomes distorted. Truffaut couldn't speak to his actors, couldn't read their language fluently, could barely direct in their tongue. So he embedded that struggle into the film's DNA, starting with credits that stumble over their own words. A quiet admission that even in trying to preserve meaning, something always gets lost in translation.